Hi everyone, Niall McIntrye here, replacing Michael Verney, who is in Cheltenham this week, and I'm joined by the usuals, John Mullane and Pat Ryan. I think I've big shoes to fill, lads, having watched Michael run up a gallops in Kilkenny last week.
Yeah, he's big into the horses, I think, isn't he? He gave up playing junior with Burr. Said he couldn't move, but now he's running up gallops, so don't know what he's at there.
Absolutely. So look, hopefully he has a good week over in Cheltenham. We'll get straight into the hurling talk, lads. There was obviously loads of action at the weekend, and we're going to kick off with Limerick and Cork, which was a 3-19 to 20 points win for Limerick. I suppose it stood out to me in the post-match interview. John Kiley said that clearly goals is something we're going after, and I suppose, Pat, it was evident from the very first minute of the game.
Yeah, it sure was, and I saw that interview he done afterwards, and you know what, it was refreshing from a Limerick point of view, in terms of, he mentioned, and it wasn't just waffle either, it was true, as we could see on the field. He mentioned the word intent, real intent to go after goals, and I think that's a great thing to hear, and it's a great thing to see that it was out there, because obviously, you don't want to be looking backwards, you want to be looking forwards. But the last two times we were knocked out of the championship, against Dublin last year and Cork the year before that, we scored no goal. So it's pretty obvious, they're identifying that and trying to go at it. And 3 goals the other night was unreal against a Cork team that they're always lauded for, even in the league so far, for scoring heavily. But they hadn't conceded much goals at all year. They've been fairly rock solid back there. So we got off to a great start. Kyle Hayes with an exceptional ball, kind of a 100-yard crossfield ball that inside forwards love. And the bull done what the bull does when he gets ball like that. It was a fantastic goal. Came out, took on these men, like from under 14 up to senior. Kind of every time you play in the forwards, that your manager tells you, take him on, and it doesn't always work like that. But Bull got inside, and geez, he's an incredible finisher. He really is. For such a big man, he uses a small hurley as well, which is kind of a funny one. And even I played a bull very, very briefly when I was in Limerick, and I don't know if you've even noticed this, he gets such power from such a small hurley. His hurley is actually double gripped, which is an unusual. I don't know, John, if you ever saw that in your day, because I never saw it even a good few years ago, but nowadays I see it a little bit more where people double grip their hurleys, and it's kind of like a tennis racket, but it's working for him. And obviously the intent to finish off the game then in terms of 2 goals when the game was kind of in the melting pot, and coming into that last 15 minutes was absolutely huge. I thought Aaron played really well. He won every ball that came into him. He turned his man. Adam English gave him a great ball in the first half. He turned his man. It was actually a good defender from Cork. George Millerick kind of stood him up and he passed it to him. But it was great intent from Glenn. Won the penalty in the second half. Every single time he must be, I don't know, look, if you asked every fullback in the country, he must be the hardest player to mark. He's just exceptional there, and Limerick fans love him. Limerick fans are crying out. Diarmaid Burns took a shot, a kind of a quick long-range free at one stage instead of going for a score, and he came into Aaron. Aaron caught it. He was inside in his own. Unfortunately, he just dropped the hurley. That was another goal chance. So we'd loads of goal chances. And on the other end, in the defensive point of view, Limerick, Cork had no clear goal chance for a team that are so good at them, which was great. They had kind of, Barry Walsh had one kind of half chance in the second half, went out for 65, and Shane Kingston had one, but it wasn't really a clear one in the first half. And look, from a Limerick point of view, very, very positive. From a Cork point of view, then, there's a worrying sign for Cork. Some people will say they just brush it off and say it's the league. I don't really buy into that. When Limerick got that 2-5 without reply in the last 15 minutes, again, looking back, Cork have a history of that, from the 46th minute to the 64th minute in the All-Ireland final, it was 3-5 to a point for Tipperary. In the last, I think it was the 56th minutes to the end of the game, in Blowing Innes in the first round last year, they outscored them. I think it was 1-9 to 3 points clear to get a draw. And Limerick, even in the round robin, it was 2-18 to 9 points at half time. So you're talking about Cheltenham now this week. Cork to me are like a horse that needs to be leading from the front. They need to start well in games, or else if it happens that another team gets a purple patch, they don't seem to respond too well. But very good game overall. I was at the game, and good hard hitting game, and they'll meet again.
How would you view that perspective, John? Cork obviously missing quite a few players, but would you share Pat's concern that they have been fading out of games late on?
Well, I wouldn't be too worried. Look, Ben O'Connor didn't look too worried after the match. I think he was quite pleased of what his team showed for large parts of that match. And I suppose look up to, 55 minutes just before Cathal O'Neill got the goal. They were well in that match. They were competing. They were going toe to toe with them, toe to toe with them in the physical stakes. I think there was only a point or two in it at that stage, and I suppose that was kind of the buffer goal that kind of gave Limerick, a margin of 5 points and opened up a gap, a comfortable gap at that. And I suppose then they tagged on a few points, but it's probably something to keep an eye on, and I think Ben O'Connor most certainly will keep an eye on, and he'll be probably trying to home in on it, no doubt, and he will be kind of, trying to address that, if it has been a problem in the past. But overall, I think considering the personnel that they were down and they were missing, I think he'll be well pleased. And look, he probably knows himself. The likelihood is that they're probably going to meet again in a league final, and there's still all this talk that potentially they could meet 5 times this year. This could be the first of 5. But look, we've been here before. We've said that there could be trilogies, and and even with trilogies with Limerick and Clare, and it didn't play out like that in the past. But I have a funny feeling that both these sides are going to meet. On a couple of occasions this year. And this could be the first of many. So I think he probably held back, probably didn't want to show his hand a whole lot. I go back to 2007 when we had that rivalry with Cork. We actually met Cork 5 times that year in competitive action between league and championship action. And believe it or not, for a Waterford team that probably, Cork probably had the Indian sign over Waterford in the probably year or two previous to 2007. We didn't lose to Cork in 2007 out of those 5 matches across the league and championship campaigns. So, but it's probably different now. I mean, it's probably very, trying to overcome a team 4 or 5 times within a year, as Cork found out last year against Tipperary. It's probably not possible. Probably would have been possible in the past with probably Kilkenny and, when this Limerick team were in their pomp. So I'm sure, Ben O'Connor is probably holding back a bit and keeping a couple of tricks up his sleeve for other meetings down the line.
John, do you not think, though, John, at half time, I understand your point, other way, because he had, we'll say, maybe 6 starters from the All Ireland playing or something like that, But at half time, they were only a point down, and when he turned around, he had almost, a full bench of almost guaranteed starters. Like, brought on Seamus Harnedy, brought on Darragh Fitzgibbon, brought on Niall O'Leary, brought on Sean O'Donoghue. I actually, look, and again, it is only a round-robin game, and they're kind of in the final anyway. I think he'd be a little bit disappointed when, at the position he was in at half time, his eyes were probably wide open going in thinking, geez, the 5 or 6 lads I could bring on here now, this would be some win to get if we get it, considering the team I named. And look, I know it's not a big deal, but I think he'd be a little bit disappointed now, considering who he had coming off the bench, with the game being so tight. And he didn't, and they ended up losing heavily. I think it would have been different if they lost by maybe 2 or 3 or 4 points. But they kind of got well beaten in the end when a lot of important players came on the field.
Yeah, but as you well know, Pat, and you've seen in the past, sometimes it doesn't play out, and you think it might play out that way. It doesn't play out that way. And all it takes is one big moment to change a game. And that moment came, and it actually came off, it was a mistake. I think, was it Tim O'Mahony? He went with the backhand pass.
Yeah.
And I think it was intercepted then. And Cian Lynch broke forward. And next thing, the hand pass into Carl O'Neill. And you, as I both well know, if you're giving Limerick a buffer of 5-6 points going into that closing quarter, it's very hard to close that gap back. But even going on Cian Lynch, we spoke about Cian Lynch last week or the week before, and you actually mentioned it about that, that some of these older, I won't say older, but the more established players now will have the bit between their teeth, common the fact that they didn't probably partake in the Tipperary game. And we've seen that firsthand Saturday night. Cian Lynch was magnificent, lads. He was magnificent. Barry Nash was very good. Sean Finn was very good. So I suppose from a Limerick point of view, I think John Kiley will be extremely pleased in where they're at right now,
I'm glad you brought up 2007, John. I was just looking back on your rivalry with Cork at that time, and in 2006 they'd beaten you guys by a point in the All-Ireland semi-final. Then you're meeting them 5 times in 2007. I mean, what is it like in the middle of that rivalry? Like, are you waking up thinking of Cork? Like, are they the thing that's on your mind driving you through the season?
Well, for us, I mean, Cork were after beating us in 2005 and 2006, and we kind of really homed in on 2007. We kind of really homed in on, any time we kind of went to play Cork, that we were going to try and, beat them and build up an air of confidence, and particularly in the league. We met them in the league first league game in Dungarvan, and then we met in the league semi-final. So to win those 2 games, you were then taking it into the championship, to I suppose to build up the belief that we're good enough to take these boys down, off the back of losing to them the 2 previous years. Now, from a Cork point of view, they probably didn't home in those matches as much as probably we did, and that's probably where some teams are in the league. Some teams will go after league games and they'll really home in and say, right, you know what, we want to register a win here today, and and we can have that in the memory bank for when we go and play, a team that we probably feel that are going to compete with us for honours come the summertime. But look, for us, it was a case then of we're after beating them, we go and beat them again, and then we beat them in the Munster semi-final, albeit they were missing a couple of players, Cusick, Sean Ogue, and The Rock.
Yeah.
And then as things transpired, then we ended up meeting in an All-Ireland quarter-final and an All-Ireland replay. And unfortunately for us, we'll probably have to do the hard work against Cork all year. We probably homed in too much on Cork, and then we came on stuck against Limerick. And that's probably something, with this championship, we can talk about, potential games with Cork and Limerick, and teams can, Cork and Limerick can't focus on one another and put too much into focus on one another, because that's where Tipperary then could come in and overturn you, or Clare could overturn you, or possibly Waterford can overturn you. So, it's going to be helter-skelter in that Munster Championship. So you can't put all your eggs into the basket and just focus on one team and saying, right, you know what, if we can overcome them, or if we can, try and get the Indian sign over them, the likelihood is we're going to push in the championship. But you don't have that luxury in the Munster Championship,
Certainly, be very risky business to focus all your energy on Cork. Well, there was some talk of shadowboxing from a Cork perspective, Pat. It certainly couldn't be said about Limerick, who have had as strong as they could put out in the field for a lot of this league campaign. I'm going to put you on the spot, Pat, and ask, how different will your... Just say guys are all fit come the first round of the Munster Championship. How different will the team look from last Saturday night coming to the first round against Clare in April?
It won't. Look, I think it's 5 weeks this Sunday until the first round, but we don't play. Limerick don't play in the first round. They have a buy-in, so it's 6 weeks from this week that Limerick play, and they potentially have 2 league matches before then. If they can get over Galway, they'll be in a final. So obviously, look, we can't foresee injuries and fellas coming back, but they have a good healthy squad at the moment. The team won't change that much, to be honest, from that starting 15 the other night. Darragh Donovan probably was in pole position to start midfield, but then of course, at high-level sport, you're out for a few weeks. Keane Lynch comes in the other night, gets man of the match. Adam English is kind of putting down a spot there as well for over the last 12 months. So, he's behind the 8 ball now, and whenever he does get back, he has to try and get back in. So at the moment, when I'm looking at that team the other night, Peter Casey, if he's fit for the first round championship, Peter Casey will come into number 15, I'd imagine. Other than that, there will not be much change other than that, unless lads really put their hands up if they get in, if they come on in one of these 2 league games or potentially 1 league game. Dan Morrissey is probably the other big name, but you've kind of 4 big names going for the full back line in terms of Sean Finn, Mike Casey, Barry Nash, Dan Morrissey, and even of course you've Matthew Fitzgerald, who was playing really well, got a small knock there recently. He won a Freshers All Ireland last week with Joel. So the four of them, I don't know. One thing I will say about the four of them, I don't know who the four of them will start. But one thing I will say is I think Mike Casey, even though maybe 3 or 4 years ago, he could have been number 4 out of those 4 guys. In terms of, it probably would have been Sean, Dan and Barry Nash would have been the full back line. I think Mike Casey over the last 12 months is up in number 1 in all those positions. I think he's just in the form of his life over the last 12 months. I think he's such an important player. I think he's in great form. I think he's hurling out. I think he's hurling the best he's ever hurled. And he's been around a long time, Mike. He's a brilliant player. I've marked him plenty over the years. He really is. He's top class. He can give it to you anyway. And other than that, the team will not change that much. You know, in fairness to Colin Coughlin, he didn't get started tonight. He'll push the 3 lads really hard in the half-back line. He had a very good Fitzgibbon campaign when he's 3rd Fitzgibbon Cup, and this one as captain. You know, so he'd like to say to himself, maybe if he gets in over the next game or two, that he could push really hard. I don't see any change other than that. So I think from the other night, I think we're looking at least 13 of the starting 15, with Peter Casey probably guaranteed if he's right and moving well to come into 15.
I think winning a league title would be really good for this squad, Pat. You know, considering we're coming off the back of last year, and considering how successful they've been in the past. And I mean, the record in finals has been formidable. I think it's Cork are the only team to beat them in the final, and look, technically you can say that they didn't lose that final. So I think the fact that's probably still a bit raw there, the fact that they lost that Munster final. So the prize of playing Cork in a league final, in a national final, I think they'll really go after that. I really do. And I think winning a league title, I think, would be really good for this squad. And I think it would, it would reassure them that, hey, you know what, we're back winning titles again. We're back being the top dogs. And as of now, right now, they're probably the team to beat. Just on the Limerick supporters, like, what's the feeling within Limerick at the moment, Pat? Like what's the expectancy this year of this team, or are the Limerick supporters kind of? Well, I wouldn't say they probably took it for granted last year. Obviously, there was success couldn't keep going on forever. But where are they at right now in regards to the feeling around the whole county? In regards to what could play out this year.
There's definitely a different feeling, John, to 12 months ago and 24 months ago. 24 months ago, you're going for 5 in a row and you're a bit spoiled, and it was always kind of said 2 years ago that, look, if they don't do it, what a journey it's been on anyway. And look, it transpired they didn't end up doing 5 in a row. And still won a Munster title that year. So, and then last year it was like, right, we're back. We'll go back for it again, and we'll get back at them, and we'll get back up to Croke Park, and hopefully we can get back at it. And it was kind of full of optimism again. Now, because you've 2 years where you haven't been successful, and when you've lost kind of consecutive knockout games in Croke Park, and even didn't get to a semi-final last year, a big upset against Dublin when you had an extra man, there's definitely a bit more nervous. There's a bit of a nervous attitude there, John, in some ways, in terms of that people don't want this to end. They don't want all these, these great times that people have had and the best memories they'll have probably in their entire lifetime over the last couple of years. Everyone is almost crying out for, God, could we get one last dance, if you know what I mean? I know the players won't be thinking that at all, because none of these players are going anywhere next year, probably the year after. But a lot of supporters are thinking, you only think 1 year at a time. They're thinking, Jesus, if you hear this from some supporters chatting to them at games and their own games, God, if we could win one more, if we could get back to one more at Ireland, it could be the sweetest of the whole lot over the last 5 or 6 years, maybe. So,
do you think they've a huge role to play as well? Because you go back to last year, they probably got caught with their pants down. They probably, probably was a small bit of air of complacency, and probably a bit of air of complacency from Limerick supporters, where they thought, right, well, look, naturally enough, we're just gonna, we won't go to that match up in Croke Park. They'll beat Dublin, they'll get the job done, and we'll look forward to a semi-final. So, I think the Limerick supporters have been excellent getting behind this team within the last 7-8 years, and obviously it does come at a cost. But would you be thinking that they have a huge role to play this year and getting behind this team even more this year?
Absolutely massive, John. Yeah, absolutely massive. And in fairness, and I'm not knocking Cork at all. Cork didn't maybe they have the most incredible support for the last 12 to 24 months. They didn't really turn up the other night. I think maybe it was the team they had, and maybe the team compared to Limerick they didn't turn up in their usual big numbers. But Limerick really turned up the other night. kind of expecting this, you know, kind of almost setting down a tone in supporter sense of that we're going to turn out for this team, especially against Cork, who have this kind of huge support. And no, John, it's really, people are just so hungry for it here. They're hungry for this Limerick team. They want to be in a league final. There's no one booking hotels now like they might have been. I know certain people who booked hotels for Ireland finals the last 2 years, and they were cancelling the hotels. That's gone now. You know, there's no one booking hotels for this year because it's kind of come down a bit in terms of expectation that you hear a lot now, even that, like, you know, even if we can just get third in Munster, whereas a couple of years ago it was Munster final. You know, you were kind of maybe you were stapling in maybe the Munster final weekend. Now I hear people saying, geez, we just give anything to get back to a quarter final again. You know, try and right the wrongs against Dublin last year. But there is a huge sense of optimism here, especially maybe it's because of how they're playing as well. They're playing quite well now, especially in the last few weeks against the likes of Tip and Cork. But it's absolutely massive. It's going to be Limerick's first round is away to Cork, down in Cork, and in our away in Ennis as well. So there's going to be some scramble for tickets from Limerick fans because they're going to follow this team. The Limerick fans, this team owes nothing to Limerick fans. It's almost Limerick fans owes it to them, you know, and they're going to turn out big time here. That first round below against Cork will be a sellout. And then the only thing with Ennis is some people won't even be able to get tickets just because of the capacity. But there is a huge sense of optimism here. There's just, if people are talking non-stop about championship and it's 6 weeks away, there's preview nights, there's different things. There was a huge crowd the other night. The terrace was open even. You don't really see that in Limerick for much league games. There was a great buzz around the town a couple of hours beforehand. We've Galway coming in 2 weeks. That's on in Limerick again. You know, and then I don't know where a league final will be on. If we beat Galway against Cork, will it be
and just the last thing, I mean, we've here in the past, like, you know, and you know, certain managers can, you know, teams can overtrain and, you know, do too much. And look, there has to be a certain element of you know, leaving lads go and enjoy themselves on a night out. And I've often heard that, you know, Kylie, you know, is free to leaving lads kind of, you know, go off and enjoy a night. Like, with the gap this week, would he have said to the lads Saturday night, like, go play the match and go off and enjoy yourselves for Saturday night, and we'll see you Tuesday night? They
would. They'd be very good at that. And they're in terms of socialising together, they do a lot of socialising together, especially after league matches. Or even in the Gaelic grounds underneath, where you have the kitchen where fellas would have their meal after. Sometimes there'll be a few drinks in there together after a league match, you know, and you might sit outside. Fellas will go out in and sit outside, maybe in the subs benches, and just chill for maybe a couple of hours after a league match, which is nice. And even it's great.
I think that's important. I honestly think that's really, really important for the spirit of the group. And I think that's probably, it's nights out like that where you kind of get to know the, you know, if you just take Matthew Fitzgerald or a new Hugh Flanagan coming onto the scene, where they kind of get to know the established players, and I think that brings the group tighter as well, like, you know.
Yeah, and one thing as well about it, people would have this kind of theory that inter-county panels and teams, they just train non-stop all the time and they're always on and no time off. One thing John and his management team are excellent at, John, and they do it more than some club teams, let me tell you. They take a lot of time off. Now, they have the work done, of course, hard pre-season, but there'll be weeks off, we'll say gap weeks in between league games here, where they train the Tuesday to Thursday, and they wouldn't be back into the following Monday. And that happens regularly in terms of, lads, you have the weekend off now.
That's brilliant.
You work really hard. Go head away with your partners there for the weekend. You know, enjoy yourselves, and we'll be back next week and we'll have a hard week. That was always a consistent thing they do, and I always find with their management team that was one really strong point that fellas as a result, and we've been very lucky in terms of we haven't had players step away from Limerick panels, like really important players, like happens because the management team have facilitated a lot of downtime over the years, lots of it, plenty of it, and I think it pays dividends then, John. You know what I mean? There's nothing worse than when the candle is being burnt on both ends. And maybe if it's been burnt well before championship and you're thinking, God, the hurling's only starting now. You know, so Limerick have kind of mastered that over the years, just in terms of how much fellas enjoy the setup, you know.
Just on that, John, would that have been something that you guys in Waterford would have got the opportunity to do, like, in the midst of your career?
Well, look, there were different times back then. I suppose back when we were playing Jesus after every league game, you know, we were out on a Sunday night. You know, even the league runs that we went on in 2007, 2006, even 2004. You know, you go out, you play a hard match, and Justin would always leave you out for a couple of drinks. And now, look, obviously it's gone on to a totally different level now, but I just think that's very, very, very important, Niall.
He had a big gap, John, didn't he, from league final? Sorry, he had a big gap.
Well, we did, but I just feel that's probably small gone out of the game and the enjoyment. Like I'm a firm believer that you can train really hard, but you cannot, deny lads, having the odd night out here or there. The rugby lads do it, the soccer lads do it. And what you're just telling us now, and, I mean, that's brilliant to hear. Absolutely brilliant to hear. Like, here's a team that have achieved all within the last 7-8 years. And Kiley, it's refreshing to hear that Kiley and Cork would allow lads a bit of downtime and leave them go off and, have a few drinks, or if it means going away for the weekend with your partner, rather than, as you just spoke about it there, rather than going constantly training, more training. And I think that can have a negative impact on any squad,
I remember, John, sorry to jump in, an example. Remember we talked about when we played Galway above in Salt Hill in 2018 that it was a big game for us in terms of that, it was kind of a coming age, All-Ireland champions, we came back, blah, blah, blah. We went through that before. When we won that, we were qualified for a league quarter final the following weekend, the following Sunday against Clare. But because that was such a big win for us, and there was such a high in the dressing room after, I remember we were coming back from Galway, and there was a Joyce's pub. I can't remember the name of the town, but it was only a pass through. It was only a turn in the road, not even a village. And we just the bus pulled in, and John stood up and he says, "We're going in here, lads, for 1 or 2 drinks, and we're leaving then, with the match where we're playing Clare in the quarter final next week." And in we went anyway, and we had 1 or 2 drinks and maybe one more, and then John rounded us all up, and we had great fun. And it was 40 of us after getting off the bus, and only 3 or 4 locals inside late on a Sunday evening. And we were all kind of come back out to the front of the door, ready to leave. And John goes, "Right, we're going to have one more, right?" And then because he goes, there's a bit of a stopgap in Innis. There was actually some sort of an accident in Innis or something like that, and the bus was going to be delayed. Right, we're going back in, but we're definitely only going back in for 1 or 2 more, he says. And then we went in again and had a great night. And sure, it was late by the time we got home. And then, we got collected and we got back and went home. And then we turned around the following week, against Clare. And we won the league quarter final. And first time we were in the league semi final in a couple of years. And it just fed into the whole enjoyment factor of it.
That's what I'm saying. I'll never forget, Niall, 2002. And we were Waterford, we were trying to make the break, and we'd win a Munster title, and the lads were probably unlucky in 98. But we were after having a poor league campaign. I remember Dublin beat us in 2002 in the league. And Waterford supporters were asking the question, well, where are we going under Justin? And I remember Justin brought us up to the Glens of Antrim 2 weeks before we played Cork in the semi-final. I think I told this the story before. And we got the train up as far as Dublin, train from Dublin to Belfast, and then we to get bus journey an hour up to the Glens of Antrim. And then we arrived at the Glens of Antrim about 9:30, and we were kind of sitting down having a grub, and next thing Justin goes in, "Keep it tidy, lads, keep it tidy." And we were kind of like, what does he mean by keep it tidy, So keep it tidy means, you can go off and have a few drinks for Jesus. Lo and behold, lads, but probably, when you kind of get the free pass, you get the free pass, and Jesus, the crack we had. And 2 weeks later, we beat Cork, and then we were going to play the Munster final against Tipperary, who were All-Ireland champions at the time. We went down and played Wexford 2 weeks before the match, and again played them in a challenge match on the Saturday. And same thing again after the match, lads, keep it tidy. Same again, free pass. We were down and enjoying ourselves down Wexford town, and we went out and blitzed Tipperary in the Munster final. And I would put it, a lot of those 2 performances against Cork and Tipperary, particularly Tipperary in the Munster final, off the back of those nights that Justin said, "You know what? Leave the lads enjoying themselves," because the work was done. The work was done. We had the work stored away. It'd be different if you didn't have the work, or the load of work, or the bank of work done, and then you're saying, "Well, Jesus, you're being left off the lead." But I just think it's very, very important. But as you said, it's just getting that balance right,
I think the question on everyone's lips is, did you keep it tidy?
I doubt it.
No, most certainly not. No.
There's a bit of development in it. It's funny, like, you know, you could be in a bus. You could be a bus of grown men, and it kind of takes you back to when you might have been 16, 17 years of age. And if you do get to go, you know what I mean? It kind of takes you back to that devilment crack of being in school. But you're actually a bus full of grown men, or a room full of grown men.
Yeah.
And that couple of pints you have, then you're giddy, and there's no more crack than when you're with a couple of friends and that giddiness kicks in, and you're like, right,
that's pretty much just said about Kyle. Now we're having one more now. We're only having one more. Back in
It was Kilkenny's heaviest defeat in league or championship since the 1954 Leinster semi-final. I'm going to lead with some quotes that I've read in the days that have followed. This one is from Walter Walsh, who says, after that performance, you'd be hoping to just get out of Leinster. I think Kilkenny are behind Galway and Dublin. I would still have them in the top three. A headline on the Irish Examiner, Patrick Horgan's new column. Patrick Horgan, is it time to ask, will Kilkenny emerge from Leinster this year? Just to play devil's advocate here, Pat, it's a team who have been in the last two All-Ireland semi-finals, lost by 2 points, the two All-Ireland finals before that. What's your view on, I suppose, those comments?
Yeah, I've seen different comments during the week pop up on the phone, and some people, whether they're for or against in terms of that, will Kilkenny progress and get better? And a lot of people sometimes are just exactly what you said. They're like, well, look, last year they were a puck of ball away from the All-Ireland final, which they were. And the year before, you know, they've lost to Clare the year before then. Both teams have not won the All-Ireland. So that's, you know, like, I work in data. That's descriptive data looking back. But sometimes that doesn't help looking forward. And I'm more in the camp, to be honest, in terms of that. I don't think they will have a good year. You know, I don't think it will just come around in 6 weeks' time. And I don't think they will get back to an All-Ireland semi-final. That's just my guess of what I'm only going off what I'm looking in front of me in terms of performances so far this year. Like, they were really poor the other day. Now, I know Derek King did come out and say that some of them were sick and different things, but that's, you know, you can only go off what you're seeing. I said it to Michael here and John a couple of weeks ago that with the fixture list the way it is, that I don't think they'll get to a Leinster final. And I'm sticking with that now. I think it's going to be a Galway and Dublin Leinster final. I think Kilkenny have a hard fixture list, even though they've been so good in Munster, and I'm not disrespecting, they are going for 7 Leinsters in a row, but they're away to Galway in the first round, you know. And now look, at the same time last year they lost to Galway in the first round and bet them twice in the league and bet them twice in the championship, but I just don't see that happening this year. They're away to Galway in the first round of the championship, then the following week they're home to Wexford, whatever it is, Wexford just always seem to play well against Kilkenny and get a result against Kilkenny. You know, they're away to Dublin then, up in Dublin, so they're facing down the barrel of a really, really hard championship here. And they're missing players. There's players away. There'll be no rush home after watching that the other night. I can tell you that. It's looking bad for Kilkenny now. And I don't think that's jumping the gun. John might say the opposite. You know, he'd say, you might say you'd have the belief in them to turn it around. I'm just going to be straight up now. I don't think they'll be in the Leinster final. I think maybe, you know, I think they'd snap their hand off for third at the moment, because they're just consistently not playing well throughout the league. Yes, tight games, they're dangerous, like against Waterford, where they really showed heart and fight, but their forwards are just not scoring over the last 4 or 5 games. Their forwards are not scoring. Their backs are not setting up their forwards to score well in terms of giving them good ball in and different things. There's a lot of negatives about them at the moment, and I don't think I'm going too hard on them there even. I think that's a reality.
I'm in the camp of, I still think they're the team to beat in Leinster. And I think, don't underestimate, lads, 3 weeks in a row, and there's not much commentary around it. 3 weeks in a row, like, they had a really physical encounter against Waterford. They had a really, really physical encounter against Cork, and they probably went into the last weekend's game, you know, with this more or less the same group of lads. And don't underestimate, lads, and I've been here before, and I remarked on it before, if a virus gets into your camp, lads, it takes you a couple of weeks to get over. I mean, I'm only speaking from experience. When I caught a virus in 2007 for the All-Ireland semi-final, and we spoke about Alan Connolly. Was 2 years ago? I think he was absolutely flying it, and then he caught a virus, and he wasn't himself for a couple of weeks. So if there's players after catching, and look, Derek Ling spoke about it before the match. He said there was a virus after getting into the camp, and lads, gee well know some of the viruses that are going around at the moment, they're not your normal virus now, or your normal flu where you're over it in 2 or 3 days. It can knock you for 6 for for a couple of weeks. So I'm leaning towards, cutting him a bit of slack. And most certainly, I think some of the Kilkenny supporters need to cut Derek Ling a bit of slack, because he's done an incredible job, with the hand he's been dealt with the last couple of years. And I think Kilkenny supporters now really need to row in behind Derek Ling, and Eddie and Cork and Michael Rice. I think they owe that much to him. And I'm thinking 5 weeks' time, you're going to see a different game, lads. A totally, complete, polar opposite to what we seen Saturday. I mean, they were so standoffish. I mean, it was just so... I mean, the lads remarked about it on League Sunday. So unlike Kilkenny, to be standing off, no turnovers, no appetite for work. The biggest one for me is not going to the end, fighting for lost causes. You see the totally opposite in 5 weeks' time, lads. And now Derek Ling, they have some motivation going forward for the next 5 weeks. I mean, what better motivation do you have? Galway in their first round of the championship, up in Salt Hill, go back to Salt Hill. And I think one thing he will be asking is for a big Kilkenny following to go up and get behind him. But what motivation they have! I mean, he doesn't have to say anything, lads. I mean, I've been there in the past, and when you've probably been there in the past as well, Pat, probably not as much. But when you get beaten in the manner in which they were beaten, I mean, that personal pride. Players have personal pride. I mean, that can hurt you. That can really hurt you. But that hurt can drive you the next day you go out to play Galway. And I'll tell you, when both those teams meet the next day, there's going to be sparks flying, and you will see a totally, totally different Kilkenny team. And what will be very, very interesting, lads, in 2 weeks' time, I'll tell you what would be lovely to see if Waterford were to turn over Tipperary the weekend.
It'd be huge.
Oh my God. Kilkenny are going to Thurles in 2 weeks' time to stay in Division 1A.
And so would Tip, John.
So will Tip. Yeah. And,
if they lost to Waterford, yeah.
Going off of that, lads, I'd just like to say massive, massive, massive kudos to Liam Cattle and the Tipperary players and the Tipperary board. That's just a show of class. And the easiest thing for them to do is say, well, look, we're not open to changing the match. And if anything, it's probably going to hinder them, lads, because they're playing Sunday now and they have to go out 6 days later. And if anything, we send on our condolences to the Kiley family. And I'm a firm believer, lads, if you have a gap week and it can allow you to go and do what Liam Cattle and the Tipperary team and the Tipperary board done, I think you go and do it, because that's real life pain, lads. I mean, we all have pain. We don't like losing matches and we're upset for a while, but real life pain is losing a loved one. But I'll tell you, I just love Cattle, and that was just a show of class out of Cattle last weekend to say, you know what, we'll agree to call off the match and we'll go down and play next weekend.
Absolutely, and refix now for next Sunday in Walsh Park, and should be a very exciting game. Pat, Galway, how impressed were you with them? Quite a number of young guns really stepping up to the mark.
Yeah, they've been one of the stories of the league so far, considering where they came from last year. And to be honest, it's not a surprise to me in one way with Micheál O'Donoghue going back in. People are nearly quick to forget how good of a manager he is and was in terms of what he done with Galway in his first stint. In 2017, obviously not only just winning the All-Ireland, but winning the league, the Leinster and the All-Ireland, and then defending his All-Ireland so well that they only lost to Limerick by a point the following year. There's no shame in that. And just in 2019 then, only being done on score difference, not to get out Leinster. So Micheál O'Donoghue is a top rated manager. And yeah, he had his teething problems last year, but you can see good coaching takes time, doesn't it, John? You'd see it with teams. Last year, we see it with other teams before even Cat's first year. Good coaching takes. The same with Paul Kinnerk in 2017.
But even that, you look at their structure and how they're setting up. They're going with one up top and flooding that middle third with bodies, and they're playing their short game through the lines, and they're probably able to do it at their ease the last 2 weekends against probably a tired Waterford team and a tired Kilkenny team. So I probably I'm really excited by what I'm seeing, and we spoke about it in the article last Saturday, and how quickly it can happen, Pat. See with your Limerick team, seen it with Clare in 2013, even Waterford under Derek McGrath, that injection of youth. And, I think we even spoke about it here a couple of weeks ago. That injection of youth gets supporters excited. It gets even the elder statesmen in the team. So even you look at Colin Mannion, even Conor Whelan. So probably the last year or two, Colin Mannion and Conor Whelan, instead of going out the last couple of years and saying, geez, the weight of having to perform, or I have to perform today, I have to score 1-4, 1-5 today. Now all of a sudden they're going, well, Jesus, you know what? I can just kind of go out and enjoy myself today. And you know what? I don't have that weight of having to perform, and if I don't perform, we don't win the match. Now they're going out excited, saying, you know what? If I only score a point or two, it's grand, because Niall will chip in, Mannion will chip in, Rabbit will chip in, Neary will chip in, Rory Burke will chip in. So there's so many options, and that allows those lads to be more freer in their mindset to go out and say, you know what? Even if I play below par today, there's still the likelihood we still have a great chance of winning the match.
Every sub they brought on the other night, John, scored from play, which is unusual. That's
unusual. But they must have put a huge amount into walkthrough sessions, because it's seamless what they're doing, because even they're rotating their full forward. Like Mannion could end up there, Neary ended up in there, Conor Whelan. So they're all taking turns, and that just doesn't happen overnight. As you probably well know, Pat. I mean, how many walkthrough sessions would you have done with Clark over the years?
Endless, and that's something. There was a training session a couple of years ago. We trained out here in my club a couple of years ago, and because some field was unavailable, and we have lights here, so Limerick came out and trained. And a friend of mine had watched the session, and he says to me after, he goes, "Jeez," he says, "I was very underwhelmed." He says, "I thought the session would be a lot more intense, and I thought Paul Kinrock would do more." He said, "But you see, it was one of those nights where it was walkthroughs from the outset looking in, and even for some players, can be quite boring, and it's laborious, and you're just literally." So Paul is just directing the session as an orchestra in terms of repetition of what you do. So he'll do a puck out, it'll play for 10 seconds, and he'll do 10 puck outs specific to some way we want to play in terms of okay lads, get the ball here in the half back line. Barry Nash, you come off his shoulder, you will either deliver it or someone else come up, and you have to just do it 10 times, and you just have to walk through that 10 times and do it, because otherwise it just can't be done. And those are the sessions that can be the difference. Nothing just happens on a hurling field ever. We're kind of every team is a mixture of their good habits and their bad habits. I was talking about Cork a while ago with some of their bad habits in terms of when teams get running, but they have incredible habits as well that they've built up of how they create goal chances, how they run. And when the ground hardens up too, they'll be a lot harder to stop than the other night. But yeah, you need them sessions, and they're absolutely huge.
But they're a massive part of modern day coaching, the walkthrough sessions.
Huge.
And if you don't have those walkthrough sessions, you're simply not going to excel. And you're not going to excel against the top class teams. And I can only imagine the amount of walkthrough sessions Galway are after having the last couple of weeks or couple of months, because it just seems to be seamless what they're doing at the moment,
Yeah, when people talk about tactics, I find hurling, like there is not an awful lot of tactics. What there is, there's patterns of play. So there's certain ways you play. And whatever you do at training, however you play at training, no matter what the greatest tactician ever comes into you in a dressing room before a match or that week, it doesn't really matter. You're going to play how you've been playing for the last 6 months on the training field 2 or 3 times a week. So them patterns of play are huge. What a pattern of play is, that means what does number 4 do when he gets the ball? He probably only has just 2 or 3 different things. Does he able to play it short, and does he go on again to get it back, or does he just hit the ball long? When he has the ball, I'm talking about all stuff on the ball now, not defending. And you have to go through those patterns of play over and over and over again. And I guarantee you, people are looking at them this year, geez, Galway are different this year to last year. They're probably doing everything the exact same as they were doing last year. It just takes time to develop those patterns of play over the case of a year. Like, we had Paul Kinrock in 2017, and we won no game in 17. We won no league game against one of the top 10 teams, you could call it. Wexford beat us, no, Wexford in 1B. We lost both championship games, the one in Munster and then we won in the qualifiers. So we won no game, and fellas were kind of questioning. But Paul didn't do anything different in 17 than he done in 18. He done nothing different. It just took us time to be coached.
And a lot of it, Pat, is just repetition.
and to do what suits you as well. Like what I say, I admire about Micheál O'Donoghue. He's Galway team because look at who he had. He probably had Joseph Cooney, Joe Canning, and Johnny Glynn in the half forward line in 2017. Now you have a different team where you have an Aaron Nyland, you have Burke, you have Mannion, where you're right, and you're saying, lads, we're actually going to run the ball, Tom Monaghan, because you have to play. There's no good trying to play just like another team, you know what I mean? Like some teams over the years might have tried to play against Limerick, how they can play, but they mightn't be fit to play that way. Whereas like Cork came in the last year and beat Limerick because they said we're going to play what suits us best, and Galway are doing that now. They have legs, like lads, Aaron Nyland, lads, he has some legs. When he turned the other night sometimes, and they're talking about Kobe McDonald in the football, and how much kind of talk he's generating and kind of excitement. To me, this young Nyland is the most exciting, lad under the age of 21 in Ireland at the moment. Like if there was a young player of the year for the league, he'd have it wrapped up. He's so exciting to watch. I love his turn of pace. But what he is, even though he's known as a scorer, he's an incredible passer of the ball. He's very good at bringing other teammates into the game. Not one bit unselfish.
But Pat, when you're having your debut year, like Nyland is just slipping in there now into a system now that leaves him kind of just be free and go and express himself. Like rather than just being stuck in a corner where a corner back is stuck up his backside, he's kind of more or less kind of want to effectively mention the Peter Casey role. He's allowed to go wherever he wants to go, like that kind of free role. And I just think it's perfect. It's the perfect fit for both Nyland and Galway at the moment, that he's allowed to go and kind of effectively go wherever he wants to and express himself whatever way he wants.
I think John, as a young, I don't know what age you were, John. Even it could even be club hurling senior or with Watford. I find some of the most, if I look backwards now, some of the most enjoyable hurling I ever played in my life is when you maybe just come into an adult team, even the club at 17, 18, there is no pressure on you. They put you in corner and they kind of say, you know yourself, if we lose today kind of a thing, they're not going to blame me. I'm only 18.
Not going to blame you,
and that is some of the most enjoyable hurling you'll ever play in your whole life. 10 years time when it's forward on, if it is club, you could be one of the big players and you might have to take on more responsibility in terms of game plans and different things and what you have to do for other players off the field, on the field. But he's just coming in now, like he's probably in college now having the crack, not doing much, probably work during the week. He's just going out hurling away. There is nothing more enjoyable than that. It's just talk about, life in its, most freest sense, where he's just turning up. He has a certain jersey now for Galway. He's going to hold on to it. And, that hopefully that form carries into him for himself into the championship. But then again, of course, John, as you said, how different the Kilkenny match will be in April for the Leinster Championship.
Well, look.
He's going to be a targeted man. He's going to be a targeted man in that game. So obviously,
well, look at it this way as well. I mean, Derek Ling now. I mean, the cat is out of the bag now in how Galway have set up, and I don't think they're going to change too much from their system unless they go with 2 inside or 3 inside. But I don't see them changing too much because it's working so well. But Derek Ling will structure his team totally different in 5 weeks' time. I mean, the space that, Whelan had, you kind of nearly feel sorry for Mikey Carey, where it was nearly 40 yards of green grass in front of Whelan and Mikey Carey. And, they might have to go back to Richie Reid just sitting in front of the D and maybe playing that +1 at the back. But, most certainly Kilkenny won't set up the way they set up last Saturday evening,
Only time will tell, guys. I suppose lots to get excited about for Galway fans, as you mentioned. We'll a quick talk about Clare's 26-120 win over Wexford. Brian Lohan is very unsure where Clare are at. He said, the top 3 teams are the better teams in Division 1B. After that, there's a bit of a gap. I suppose they probably don't know where they're at. I want to ask you a question, John, about the Leinster Championship. I'd imagine it's a very exciting time for the Leinster Championship in that it's extremely open. Like Wexford, Keith Rossiter was very disappointed after the display at the weekend, but at the same time they were a puck of a ball from getting a draw and maybe booking their place in the league final. So I suppose you have Kildare going great at the same time. Wexford are playing Kildare in the first round of Leinster. It's probably an exciting time for Leinster in a under the radar kind of a fashion.
It is, because I suppose, look, you can only judge off what your eyes are seeing. I suppose that result from Salt Hill now is kind of really opened up the Leinster Championship. Maybe Kilkenny are probably coming back to the pack, and I suppose obviously you'd have probably Galway are probably ranked number one right now, but I'd probably still have Kilkenny number one until Galway go and beat a Kilkenny and Leinster final. You know, I'd still have Kilkenny as number one, but Kilkenny are most certainly beatable this year by i.e. maybe a Galway, a Dublin. From a Wexford point of view, you know, Wexford could be kind of, rather than kind of getting drawn into maybe being in the top three, they could be kind of more, you know, if they were to lose one or two games early doors in the Leinster Championship, they could be looking over their shoulder, because, you know, Kildare, both Kildare and Offaly away, and they're not going to be any gimmies. And from a Wexford point of view, you would be a small bit worried, considering, you know, there probably ain't enough players shooting the lights out and putting scores on the board. And when you're kind of over-reliant on Lee Chin and Simon Roach, who was very good the weekend, that would be the worry from a Wexford point of view and Keith Rosser. But I think he might have to look at his structure as well. I did mention it here a couple of weeks ago as something to keep an eye on after the Dublin match. You know, and they're probably for large parts of that match trying to set up the exact same way as Galway, playing one up top and trying to flood that middle third. But they probably don't have the players that Galway have, the shooters out the field, that they can work the ball and, you know, hit you from long distance. And then if they kind of can toy with you, then draw you out and then play the ball inside. So that's probably something Rossiter might have to look at going forward for the next couple of weeks before the Leinster Championship kicks into play, is the structure of his team. Now, he's done it for large parts of the game against Dublin, playing with one up top, and done it for large parts of the match against Clare. And then it seems to be more in the first half, and then they commit more bodies forward in the second half. But when they commit more bodies forward in the Dublin game and last weekend, they seem to get more joy out of it, you know?
Yeah. Just one last question for Pat before we run out of time. What do you make of Kildare, Pat? How will they compete? They have Wexford in the next round of the league. They have Wexford in the next round of the, or in the first round of the Leinster Championship.
Yeah, they're playing really well, getting plenty of goals too. They have 12 goals. It could be the most in both sets of the league so far. So that's a great sign of a team that's scoring goals. They had kind of their first game, and they've just come up to it. They're still in with a chance of, now it's a very outside chance, but they're in with a chance of, they've solidified their place in 1B, which would have been, you know, probably the goal just coming up. But they've kind of exceeded expectations, really. They were really good the other day. Now they have some fantastic hurlers. I'm missing one of their top forwards the other day.
Could you see them beating the Wexford, or like really challenging Wexford?
To be honest, when John was talking about Wexford there, I don't think he'll disagree with me, and I think a lot of Wexford people would agree with me when I say this. Nobody would be that surprised if Wexford lost the first round to Kildare, and I won't say that surprised, it would be a big upset. But if Wexford lost the first round to Kildare and turned around and beat Kilkenny the week after, that's almost what Wexford could do. You know, they're such a maverick team and unique team. They lost.
Who do Wexford play first in the Leinster Championship?
Kildare. And then they're away to Kilkenny. Like I'm saying, John, if they didn't beat Kildare, you wouldn't be surprised if they turn around and bet Kilkenny. It happened a couple of years ago, where they drew at Westmeath. They were 17 points up, and they drew at Westmeath, and then they came on and bet Kilkenny. Then a week or two later.
But Kildare are growing, lads. And
yeah, they're willing to run,
and they're getting more confident in themselves. You know, some of the passages of play are really, really good on the eye, and you know, if a Tipperary or Cork or Limerick were doing what some of these lads are doing, you'd be kind of going, wow, Jesus, that was impressive. Like, they really are starting to grow. And I wouldn't say sky's the limit, but most certainly, like, they will be looking at that Leinster Championship and saying, you know what, we can really home in and target maybe 2 games. We can beat Offaly, and I think they'll be really going after that Wexford game. And you know what's refreshing to hear is Dowling saying that they want to go down to Wexford and beat Wexford and try and finish the league campaign on a high. I mean, that's fantastic to hear. Like,
they're moving really well. And what I see now is, in terms of Leinster Championship, is like this league campaign they have now is a breath of fresh air for the Leinster Championship. We all know people have kind of talked down the Leinster Championship over the last years, and it's just a fact in terms of Munster. But that could change very quickly, lads. one thing that would really help it, if you look back at Munster Championship, the round robin games have been unreal, but at the end of the year, people often reference the finals. The finals have been so good in Munster over the last couple of years. But the final in Leinster, I don't know what you think about this, it just has to come out of Croke Park. It just, there has to be no other option here that I can't understand how it hasn't happened already. And it might even be better now. Obviously, Kilkenny were so dominant and Kilkenny could get there again. But we'll just say if Kilkenny didn't get there. Like, imagine Dublin and Galway in Portlaoise or Tullamore, or imagine if Offaly upset it or Wexford upset it, they meet Kilkenny or something, and it's on in Tullamore or Portlaoise. I've played in both of them stadiums. They're both lovely places to play, and you see even with Offaly under 20s playing Leinster finals and All-Ireland finals in Nolan Park, packed to the rafters. Like, imagine a Galway and Dublin Leinster final in Nolan Park, lads. The atmosphere there would be absolutely incredible, and it would do wonders for the Leinster Championship. So I just don't understand. I know that Croke Park is, the Leinster Council's biggest place and blah, blah, blah. But Jesus, I just think for the better of the game. Like, I look at Munster there, we're kind of spoiled in Limerick, obviously. Like, I was able, I'm from Limerick, was able to go to a Munster final in Limerick last year versus Cork. An incredible occasion, incredible day, packed to the rafters. Same in Thurles, even if we were to go and play Tip there or Clare there or Waterford there. And it's closer to you even. You know, like Galway having to travel all the way to Dublin if they play. Like, why not meet them somewhere? If they're meeting Kilkenny, meet them in Tullamore and take them on there. It would add a lot to the Leinster Championship. And the Leinster Championship is in a position now where this could be the best Leinster Championship in a couple of years. And I think if they came out and said the Leinster final is on in a neutral venue this year, not Croke Park, there would be a bigger excitement among supporters. That's what I think.
Absolutely. Certainly lots to look forward to with the season ahead. Lads, we'll leave it at that. And we'll hopefully get to watch the first race of the Cheltenham Festival. We might see Michael Verney running up the hill, jumping the final fence. We'll see.
I'm going to back talk in the forest.
Sure, Michael was down there with Joseph O'Brien last week, so only a good omen there. We shall see. Thanks very much, lads.